I was just putting the finishing touches on dinner when my phone buzzed. Kelly and I had been together for 3 years and living together for one while I helped her through grad school. I paid our rent, her tuition, and even covered her credit card bills. That night, while reviewing quarterly reports at my desk, her text appeared. "I found someone else. I want nothing more to do with you." My stomach dropped as I stared at those cold words on my screen. Before I tell you how my world collapsed that day, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe to follow my journey from heartbreak to redemption. The first time I met Kelly was at my buddy Jake's housewarming party 4 years ago. She stood by the window, glass of wine in hand, laughing at something someone had said. Her auburn hair caught the evening light, and when our eyes met, I felt something I had not experienced in years. It was not just her beauty that attracted me, but the intelligence and ambition that radiated from her. "You must be Michael," she said, extending her hand. "Jake mentioned you might be here. I am Kelly." We spent the rest of the evening talking about everything from our favorite books to our career aspirations. Kelly was working in marketing but dreamed of getting her MBA to climb the corporate ladder. I told her about my work as a financial analyst at a growing tech firm. By the time the party wound down, I had already asked for her number. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. I still remember how the candlelight illuminated her face as she told me about growing up in Seattle, her move to pursue her career, and her 5-year plan that included that coveted MBA. I was captivated not just by her beauty, but by her drive and clarity of purpose. The evening ended with a kiss that promised something meaningful was beginning. "I have not connected with someone like this in a long time," she admitted as I walked her to her car. I could not have agreed more. From that night forward, we began building something that felt real and substantial. What began as weekly dates soon became daily texts and nightly calls. We discovered shared interests in hiking, independent films, and a particular fondness for hole-in-the-wall restaurants that served authentic international cuisine. Soon, casual dating evolved into an exclusive relationship. I introduced her to my parents during their visit, and she took me to her sister's wedding as her +1. "He is the one, Mom," I overheard her saying on the phone one evening, 6 months into our relationship. The words filled me with both joy and terror, but mostly joy. I began to picture a future with Kelly, one where we built a life together. By our 1-year anniversary, we were discussing marriage as an eventuality, not a possibility. I supported her dream of advancing her education, and she encouraged my ambition to move up in my company. We seemed perfectly aligned, two people with compatible goals and values ready to support each other through life's journey. "When I imagined my future," Kelly told me during a weekend getaway to the mountains, "you are always there beside me." I felt the same way, and it was this certainty that led me to make what would later prove to be a catastrophic financial decision. The acceptance letter from the prestigious Wharton School of Business arrived on a Tuesday. Kelly called me at work, her voice trembling with excitement. She had been accepted to one of the top MBA programs in the country. I rushed home that evening with champagne, ready to celebrate this milestone. But as the initial excitement faded, reality set in. "I do not know how I am going to afford this," she admitted, the worry lines creasing her forehead. "Even with scholarships and loans, working part-time will barely cover my living expenses, let alone tuition." I watched her face fall as she realized her dream might remain just that, a dream. Without thinking through the implications, I made an offer that seemed natural at the time. "Let me help you," I said. "This is your chance to create the future you have always wanted. We are in this together." The relief and gratitude in her eyes convinced me I was making the right decision. We drafted a plan where I would cover our living expenses and help with her tuition. I added her as an authorized user on my credit cards for emergencies and books. We set up joint accounts for household expenses, with the understanding that once she graduated and landed her dream job, she would contribute more substantially. "I will pay you back every penny," she promised, kissing me. "Once I am making 6 figures, you can take a year off if you want, and I will support you." I believed her completely. In my mind, I was investing in our future together. Moving in together seemed like the logical next step. We found a nicer apartment closer to her school, with higher rent that I willingly covered. Our daily routine settled into a comfortable rhythm, with me leaving early for work and often staying late to cover the increased expenses, while Kelly balanced her studies and a part-time research position at the university. Looking back, I now recognize the warning signs that began to appear about 6 months into this arrangement. Kelly started staying out later, citing study groups and networking events. The affectionate texts throughout the day became less frequent. When we were together, she was often distracted, her attention focused on her phone. "Is everything okay between us?" I asked one night after another silent dinner. "Everything is fine," she assured me, blaming her distraction on the pressure of midterms and group projects. "This program is just really demanding." I accepted her explanation without question. After all, I had witnessed how challenging her coursework was and how much time she dedicated to her studies. I dismissed my concerns, attributing the distance between us to the temporary stress of her program. I told myself things would return to normal once she graduated. I could not have been more wrong. The day the text arrived started like any other Tuesday. I had a morning meeting followed by financial projections for the upcoming quarter. My team had just landed a major client, and the atmosphere at the office was positive. Around 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Kelly. I expected something mundane, like a question about dinner plans or a reminder to pick up something from the store. Instead, those cold words stared back at me. "I found someone else. I want nothing more to do with you." I blinked, certain I had misread, but the words remained unchanged on the screen. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "Is this some kind of joke?" Her response came immediately. "No joke. I have moved on. Do not contact me again. I will pick up the rest of my things when you are not there." I tried calling her, but the call went straight to voicemail. I sent more texts ranging from confused to pleading, "Kelly, what is happening? Can we talk about this? 3 years together and this is how it ends." A text message. No response came. The room seemed to spin around me. My colleague David noticed something was wrong and approached my desk. "You look like you have seen a ghost," he said, his voice concerned. "I need to go," was all I could manage, gathering my laptop with shaking hands. My manager nodded when I mentioned a family emergency, and I stumbled to my car, barely registering the drive home. Physical symptoms overwhelmed me. Nausea rising in my throat, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. 3 years of my life, thousands of dollars in support, countless promises of a future together, all ended in a 2-sentence text message. I parked haphazardly in front of our apartment building and rushed inside, not sure what I expected to find. The answer became immediately clear as I walked through the door. Kelly had been planning this for weeks, maybe longer. Her essential belongings were gone. Dresser drawers emptied, makeup vanished from the bathroom counter. In the closet, the expensive dresses I had bought her for networking events and the designer shoes that had been essential for making the right impression were missing. What remained were the everyday items, things easily replaced. On the kitchen counter sat her key, but no note. No explanation beyond that impersonal text. I sank onto the couch, our couch that I had paid for, and tried to make sense of what was happening. That was when I noticed the mail bills I had been too busy to open the night before. Credit card statements showing recent large purchases at luxury stores. I had never visited charges for hotels in the city where we lived, restaurants I had never eaten at. With growing horror, I logged into my accounts and discovered thousands of dollars in charges over the past month. Jewelry, clothing, weekend getaways, all on my cards, where she was an authorized user. The total made me physically ill. Over $5,000 in the past month alone. My hands moved mechanically to my laptop, opening social media accounts I rarely checked. There she was in photos posted over recent months, smiling beside a man I had never seen. The location tags matched the hotel and restaurant charges on my credit cards. In one photo from 6 weeks earlier, she was wearing a bracelet I now recognized from the credit card statement, her hand resting on his arm, her face tilted toward him adoringly. While I worked overtime to fund her education and our life together, she had been using my money to build a relationship with someone else. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that my mind could barely process it. That first night alone in what had been our apartment was the longest of my life. I cycled through emotions like changing channels, grief giving way to anger, anger dissolving into confusion, confusion circling back to a hollow sense of loss. Around midnight, I called my oldest friend, Mark. She did what he asked after I explained the situation. His outrage on my behalf provided the first moment of validation I had felt since reading that text. "Come stay with me if you need to," he offered. "You should not be alone right now." I declined but promised to keep him updated. After ending the call, I spent the night reviewing every financial account we had shared. Credit cards, checking accounts, savings, even investment accounts where I had listed her as a beneficiary. The total financial damage was staggering, over $47,000 in tuition, rent bills, and credit card charges over the past year alone. Sleep never came that night. As dawn broke, something shifted inside me. The shock and hurt began to crystallize into something harder, more resolute. I had been used, manipulated, and discarded, but I would not remain a victim. It was time to protect what remained of my financial stability and self-respect. First came calls to the credit card companies. I explained the situation and requested immediate removal of Kelly as an authorized user on all accounts. I changed every password for online banking and investment platforms. Then I visited my bank as soon as it opened to close our joint checking and savings accounts, transferring the balances to new accounts in my name only. With each action, I felt a small measure of control returning. Finally, I sent one last text to Kelly. "As you wish. I have respected your decision. Do not contact me again." Then I blocked her number and removed her from all my social media accounts. It was done. I had severed every financial tie that bound us together. Only later would I discover that this was just the beginning of the battle. The first sign of trouble came 2 days later. My phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "What the hell did you do?" Kelly's voice was shrill with indignation. My cards were declined at Nordstrom. I was standing there, with $3,000 worth of clothes. Those were my cards. I reminded her, my voice calmer than I felt. "You are no longer an authorized user. You cannot do that," she shouted. "I need that money." "What am I supposed to do about my expenses?" "That sounds like a personal problem," I replied then. Ended the call and blocked the number. More calls followed from different numbers. I blocked each one after listening long enough to confirm it was Kelly. Then the texts started sent from friends, phones, or new numbers she must have acquired just to contact me. "You owe me one read. I gave you 3 years of my life. I deserve half of everything," claimed another. "You promised to support me through school." The most telling message arrived 3 days after her initial text. "Just wait until everyone hears what you did to me. How you cut me off without warning. How you abandoned me." I saved every message but responded to none, creating a documented trail of her communications. My attorney would later thank me for this foresight. The financial aftermath hit harder than I expected. My credit score took a temporary hit from closing long-standing accounts. My savings were depleted. The apartment that had once felt like home now seemed tainted by memories and betrayal. But each day that passed brought a little more clarity, a little more strength. A week after Kelly's text, an email arrived with the subject line, "Urgent Financial Support Obligation." The message claimed that I had created an implied contract by supporting her education and was legally obligated to continue that support until her graduation. It was signed Kelly Anderson, but included contact information for someone named Travis Anderson. A quick social media search revealed Travis to be Kelly's cousin, a second-year law student. Not quite the high-powered attorney the email had implied. Still, the legal threat was concerning enough that I scheduled a consultation with an actual attorney the following day. Jennifer Palmer, a family law specialist, reviewed my situation with pragmatic efficiency. The good news, she told me, leaning back in her chair, is that without marriage, a formal written agreement or cohabitation in a state with common law marriage, you have no legal obligation to continue supporting her. And the bad news, I asked. The bad news is that proving all these expenses were gifts rather than loans could be messy if she decides to pursue this. People say all sorts of things during relationships that can be reinterpreted later. At her advice, I gathered evidence of my voluntary financial support bank statements, text messages where Kelly had expressed gratitude for gifts, social media posts where she had tagged me thanking me for various purchases. I created a folder containing everything that might be relevant should this escalate further. The escalation came sooner than expected. 2 days after receiving the email, I looked up from my desk at work to find Kelly standing in the doorway of my office, her face flushed with anger. "You cannot just cut me off like this," she announced loudly, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. "I gave up opportunities for you. I planned my life around your promises." I remained seated, gesturing for her to lower her voice. "This is not the place for this conversation, Kelly." "Where is the place, then?" she demanded, stepping closer. "You will not answer my calls or texts. You changed the locks on the apartment. You left me with nothing." By now, my colleagues were openly staring. I could see David by the coffee machine, phone in hand, likely calling security. "I supported you voluntarily," I said quietly. "That support was contingent on our relationship, which you ended. I owe you nothing further. You will regret this," she hissed, slamming her hand on my desk, sending papers flying. "I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are." Security arrived moments later, escorting a still shouting Kelly from the building. My manager called me into his office afterward, where I gave him a sanitized version of events and assured him there would be no further disruptions. What I did not mention was the sick feeling in my stomach, or the embarrassment of having my personal life so publicly exposed. That evening, I filed paperwork for a temporary restraining order citing Kelly's workplace outburst and increasingly threatening messages. The process was straightforward, and the order was granted the following day. I sent a copy to her last known email address, with no accompanying message. 48 hours after Kelly's scene at my office, my phone rang with a call from a number, with the prefix I now recognized as belonging to a downtown law firm. This time it wasn't Kelly's cousin playing attorney, but Elizabeth Winters of Winters and Associates, a respected family law practice in the city. "Mr. Davis," she began. After introducing herself, "I represent Kelly Anderson in a matter concerning financial support. I was hoping we could schedule a meeting to discuss an amicable resolution. The fact that Kelly had hired a legitimate attorney was concerning, but I had prepared for this possibility. I agreed to a meeting the following day, at the attorney's office, bringing both my lawyer and my documentation. Elizabeth Winters was professional, but clearly operating under a set of facts provided by Kelly that bore little resemblance to reality. She began by outlining Kelly's position that I had promised to support her through completion of her degree, that she had made life decisions based on this promise, and that the sudden withdrawal of support constituted a breach of an implied contract. My attorney, Jennifer, listened patiently before responding. "My client has extensive documentation showing that his support was provided as gifts within the context of a romantic relationship, not as contractual obligations." She placed a folder on the desk. "This includes text messages from Miss Browder Anderson expressing gratitude for these gifts, social media posts, characterizing them as generous gestures, and no written agreement of any kind, suggesting these were loans or creating any obligation for continued support." As the meeting progressed, Elizabeth's expression shifted from confident to concerned as she reviewed our evidence. The final blow came when Jennifer played a saved voicemail from 6 months earlier in which Kelly specifically thanked me for everything you do for me, all the gifts and support, and stated that I am so lucky to have found someone so generous. Additionally, Jennifer continued, "We have evidence that Miss Anderson used my client's credit cards to finance outings with another individual while still in a relationship with my client. This constitutes fraudulent use of those cards, as they were provided for educational and household expenses only." Elizabeth asked for a brief recess to consult privately with Kelly, who was apparently waiting in another room. When they returned, the attorney's approach had changed dramatically. "My client is willing to settle this matter without further legal action," Elizabeth said, her tone now conciliatory. She would accept a one-time payment of $15,000 to cover her transition expenses in exchange for signing a mutual non-disparagement agreement and releasing any claims against Mr. Davis. I did not need to confer with Jennifer to know my answer. "I owe her nothing," I stated firmly. "Not one more dollar. The only agreement I am willing to sign is one where she acknowledges she has no claim against me and agrees to cease all contact." The meeting ended shortly afterward, with Elizabeth promising to discuss options with her client. As we left the office, Jennifer gave me an approving nod. "You did well in there. I doubt we will hear from them again, at least not through legal channels." She was right. 3 days later, Elizabeth Winters sent a brief email stating that she was no longer representing Kelly Anderson in any claims against me. The legal threat had been neutralized. Though one final message came from Kelly herself, from yet another new number. "This is not over. You will regret crossing me." I saved the message with the others but did not respond. In my mind it was over. I had stood my ground, protected what remained of my finances, and refused to be manipulated any further. It was time to focus on rebuilding what had been broken. The weight that lifted from my shoulders when Jennifer confirmed the case was officially closed was indescribable. "Unless she finds another attorney willing to take a losing case, your legal concerns are over," she assured me. "The restraining order remains in effect for 3 months. If she violates it, call the police immediately." I thanked Jennifer for her guidance through the legal minefield and left her office feeling like I could finally breathe again. The constant anxiety of waiting for another legal threat or confrontation had taken a toll I had not fully recognized until it was gone. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with spreadsheets open on my laptop assessing the full financial damage. The total was sobering, nearly $50,000 over 3 years when accounting for everything from tuition payments to daily expenses, credit card charges, and legal fees. My emergency fund was depleted and my investment accounts had taken a significant hit. I created a strict budget for the coming year, cutting all non-essential expenses. No vacations. Minimal dining out, a pause on retirement contributions beyond the company match. I calculated that with discipline I could rebuild my emergency fund within 6 months and restore my investment accounts within 18. It would not be easy, but it was doable. The process was oddly therapeutic, giving me a sense of control over my future that had been missing since Kelly's text. I titled the spreadsheet "Recovery Plan" and set calendar reminders for monthly financial reviews to track my progress. Next came the task of untangling the credit mess. I scheduled appointments with my bank to discuss options for rebuilding my credit score, which had dropped nearly 40 points after closing long-standing accounts. The banker suggested a secured credit card to rebuild history and advised patience, assuring me that with consistent on-time payments, the score would recover within a year. As I implemented my financial recovery plan, I also crafted a set of personal financial rules for future relationships. Any future partner would need to demonstrate financial independence before any discussion of shared expenses. Separate accounts would remain separate, with joint accounts limited to specific shared household costs. And most importantly, I would never again become the sole financial support for another adult without legal protections in place. These new boundaries felt like armor protecting me from ever experiencing this kind of betrayal again. What I did not yet understand was that financial recovery would prove far easier than emotional healing. The first few weeks after the legal issues were resolved were the hardest. I would come home to the apartment we had shared and still expect to see her there, only to be met with silence and empty spaces. Sleep was elusive, my appetite non-existent. The betrayal replayed in my mind on an endless loop, each remembered moment now tainted with doubt. Had she ever loved me, or had I simply been a convenient source of financial support? At Mark's insistence, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist specializing in relationship trauma. Dr. Marshall listened to my story without judgment during our first session, then offered a perspective I had not considered. What you are describing is not just heartbreak, but a breach of trust that borders on financial abuse, he explained. Your reaction, this mixture of grief, anger, and self-doubt, is completely normal given the circumstances. Over the weeks that followed, our sessions focused on processing the betrayal without allowing it to define my sense of self-worth or my ability to trust others. I learned to recognize cognitive distortions like assuming all future partners would be similarly exploitative and to challenge those thoughts with evidence and reason. The goal is not to forget what happened, Dr. Pranis, Marshall told me, but to integrate it into your understanding of yourself and the world without letting it limit your future happiness. Slowly, I began reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my relationship with Kelly. Mark organized weekly basketball games that got me out of the apartment and physically active. My colleague David invited me to join a hiking group that met on weekends, introducing me to new people and new perspectives. I signed up for a cooking class, something I had always wanted to try but had never prioritized. The focus required to master new techniques provided a welcome respite from rumination and the satisfaction of creating something tangible. Something that existed because of my efforts became a powerful metaphor for rebuilding my life. As months passed, I began noticing subtle changes. I slept better. I laughed more easily. The mention of Kelly's name no longer sent a jolt of pain through my chest. I found myself able to talk about what had happened without the burning anger or crushing sadness that had initially overwhelmed me. Looking back at the relationship with clearer eyes, I recognized red flags I had ignored. Kelly's reluctance to contribute financially, even before her MBA program. The way she had isolated me from friends who asked questions about our financial arrangement. Her dismissal of my concerns about mounting expenses. The subtle manipulation techniques she had employed to maintain access to my resources while giving less and less emotionally. These realizations did not excuse her betrayal, but they provided valuable lessons for the future. I learned to distinguish between generosity and being taken advantage of, to recognize the difference between supporting a partner and enabling dependency, to understand that love should never require financial sacrifice without reciprocity. Perhaps most importantly, I discovered a sense of self-worth that existed independently of my relationships or what I could provide to others. I was not valuable because I could pay for things or solve problems or be endlessly supportive. I was valuable simply because I was myself, with all my strengths and flaws, hopes and fears. This newfound self-understanding led to unexpected positive outcomes. At work, my increased confidence and emotional stability was noticed, leading to a promotion I had not anticipated. The friends who had stood by me through the worst of the betrayal became closer than ever, creating a support network I knew I could rely on no matter what. And yes, eventually, I met someone new. Sophia was different from Kelly, in every way that mattered, financially independent, with a successful career of her own, honest about her expectations, respectful of boundaries. We took things slowly, both of us bringing lessons from past relationships into this new connection. When the topic of finances arose, as it inevitably does, I was upfront about my experience and the boundaries I needed. To my relief, Sophia not only understood but appreciated the clarity. I would never want someone to support me that way, she told me during a conversation about money. I want a partner, not a provider or a dependent. It was exactly what I needed to hear. Our relationship continues to grow, built on mutual respect, shared values, and a foundation of honesty that feels refreshingly secure. The painful lesson Kelly taught me ultimately led to a better life than I could have imagined while in the midst of that betrayal. I learned to value myself, to set healthy boundaries, to recognize the difference between love and exploitation. I discovered strength I did not know I possessed, and built a life that reflects my true values rather than someone else's expectations. If you have ever experienced betrayal or financial exploitation in a relationship, know that recovery is possible. It takes time, support, and intentional work, but you can emerge stronger and wiser. The pain does not disappear completely, but it transforms into wisdom that guides you toward better choices and deeper connections. I would love to hear your stories or thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced something similar? Or do you have questions about setting healthy financial boundaries in relationships? Leave a comment. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and recovery, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.